Section 12.2 is about chords and arcs. So first knowing, we've talked about arcs. So arcs would be what you see on the outside of the circle, that's just part of it. So arc BC, arc CD, etc. A chord is where you have a point on a circle and another point on the other circle, but it does not go through the diameter. So in this picture, or in this theorem, it says within a circle or in congruent circles, congruent central angles have congruent arcs. So what that's saying is, if these two angles, let's say AOB and COD, are congruent, then I also know that these two arc measurements have to be congruent. And then vice versa. If those two arc measurements are congruent, then I know those two angles are congruent. The second theorem that we're going to use is within a circle or in congruent circles, congruent central angles have congruent chords. So this is saying if this angle, AOB, is congruent to COD, then these two lines, which are the chords, AB, would be congruent to CD. So it's kind of hard to see, but the chords are from AB and CD. Those are the chords that I would be referring to. And then the converse of that is also true. If those chords are congruent, then I also know that those central angles are congruent. Okay, last theorem we're going to use is within a circle or in congruent circles, congruent chords have congruent arcs. So if these two chords, AB and CD, are congruent, then I also know that these two arcs, arc AB and arc CD, would be congruent, and then also the converse is true. So I gave you all those theorems first because you're just going to get a variety of questions that you're just going to have to use them on. And some of them require a lot of work and some of them don't. So let's take a look at this first one. So here's my first picture, and it asks, what is the measure of arc WX? Well, notice that I have two chords congruent. And so it said in one of those theorems that if my chords are congruent, then the measurement of the arcs are. So that means the arc measurement of XW is 74. Simple as that. Why don't you try letter B? So on letter B, it asks, what's the length of ST? Well, I know these two arc measurements are congruent, so then the two chords have to be congruent. So ST has to be 42. Now let's look down here at the bottom. What is the length of ST? Well, once again, it says these two central angles are congruent, so that means these two chords have to be congruent. So if this is 8, then ST also has to be 8. And then last, it asks, what's the value of W? Well, again, if my arc measurements are the same, then these two chords have to be the same. So I would just set these two expressions equal to each other. So I set 2W equaling to W plus 13, and then I just solved. So I subtracted 1W from each side, and then divided. So W would be 13. So it is really as simple as that. You're just using the variety of those theorems to look to see what is either the measure of the arc, the measure of the central angle, or the measure of the chords. Let me know if you still have questions.